Misconceptions and realities of educational system. In this video, we will address the misconceptions that YouTubers Next School and Prince EA have raised about the problems in the educational system. The statement that the current system of education was designed in the industrial age mainly to turn out factory workers. That is Next School claim, influenced from the belief or idea of some personalities. And education were made to train people to work in factories, which explains why they put students in straight rows, nice and neat, tell them sit, still raise your hands if you want to speak. Prince EA claim, which is almost the same with Next School. This idea, although became one of the few purposes of establishing education centuries ago, is a misconception. Reality of it. First of all, the connotation that because students are educated by batches and govern their lives by ringing bells, or told to queue in a straight line and ask them to raise their hand if they want to speak, is a sign that they are groomed to be factory workers. This is degrading and equally insulting to the factory workers around the world. Factory workers have the equal rights and dignity as the CEOs of every company, much more equal in all terms with the rest of the population of the world. Industrial age or an ancient institution belief or idea about educational system doesn't serve its purpose today and even before because it is very obvious and evident that the educational system did not only produce factory workers, but scientists, doctors, engineers, lawyers, teachers, athletes, musicians, artists, and other talents, professions, and even freelance workers. It also produced presidents of every country, CEOs of every company, and generals of every army. As to the students queuing in line, being grouped into batches, following instructions and waiting for their turn to speak, let me give you a few examples. Those passengers queuing at the airport for check-in. People who are falling in line to enter the theme parks. People who are queuing in group before they can enter the Petronas Tower. And Eiffel Tower. People who are attending conferences or seminars or some informational talk that they need to wait for their turn to speak after the speaker has given the go signal to do so. Would this mean that all of these examples are typified for robots, zombies? Of course not. They are only being trained to be disciplined and respectful individuals who will listen and talk one at a time. Individuals who will become a law-abiding citizens, a factory workers, and a CEOs that both will follow the company policy and procedures. Scientists, engineers, and other experts at the NASA working to build a space rocket that will carefully follow every single instructions, procedures, and details of their project for the successful launch of the satellite. Doctors will follow the procedures and instructions in any medical operations. The president of a country that will abide by the mandate of the Constitution and will implement it accordingly. Imagine during an emergency in an oil-rig, FPSO, and other vessels that there are no one giving advice, no one giving instructions of what to do, and no guide to follow. Imagine in a country where there are no laws to follow and no authority to enforce the law. Imagine in a company where rules, policies, and procedures are non-existent. Would it not mean a disorder, chaos, disaster, and bankruptcy? Prince EA and Next School statement that literally more than a century, nothing has changed in the educational system, or our school hasn't changed much for hundreds of years. The claim is also a misconception because the reality of it, there are plenty of improvements that happened from the birth of education up to present. Just like now, we have homeschooling or open university. And with the advent of information age, educational system will continue to evolve and improve. Okay, now let us consider that there are no changes in the classrooms of today and the classrooms 150 years ago. Aren't these the same classrooms that produced Albert Einstein, Barack Obama, Usain Bolt, Anna Pavlova, Bill Gates, Neil Armstrong, Michael Jordan, Steve Jobs, Roger Federer, Tiger Woods, Mahatma Gandhi, Michio Kaku, and continue to produce more young achievers like Nevada Sanchez, Konstantin Batygin? These personalities are the people who can think creatively, innovatively, critically, and independently, or people who can be creative, who can communicate their ideas, and collaborate with others, as quote on Prince EA and Next School themselves. Not only that, most of these people can do extraordinary things. It is by Prince EA admission himself that the world has progressed. Thanks to that, he even stressed out in his evidence the big difference of a smartphone and the state-of-the-art sports car of today to a simple analog phone and car 150 years ago. It is further reinforced by Next School himself by admitting that because of the internet and the digital media, our children have at their fingertips all the information in the world. Technology has made it possible for anyone to learn anything. Space age, computer age, and information technology age come into existence because of the modern day schooling that is now in question. This statement that complete lack of autonomy and control. Phrases like at school, every minute of a child's life is tightly controlled by the system, that they are not in charge of their own lives. Modern day schooling is turning millions of people into robots. These are all another misconceptions because the reality of it, the statements are an exaggeration. As I have taken from an example of Next School himself, Dan Ping quote, autonomy is an innate psychological need. If so, then there is no way that every person will not resist any attempt to control their lives. Yes, schools have set of rules and guidelines to follow. Even at home, we have rules and arrangements to follow. So what difference does it make when at school? If we are required to control our behavior in courts of law, in special ceremonies where manners are observed, why not in school? At school, there are control measures to observe in the same way as in other establishments, organizations, institutions, and governments have. Like for example, the commercial airlines. Pilots and cabin crew are obliged and compelled to complete a checklist before takeoff. Without completing the form and ticking all the boxes as proof that all those stated in the checklist have been inspected and equipment tried and tested and found in good working conditions, the airline cannot take off. Now, let's say that the checklist form is completed and it turned out that all is good and ready for takeoff. Still, the pilots need to follow the procedures in operating the cockpit controls for takeoff. In the entire duration of the flight, even until the airplane landed, parked, and in complete stop, there are still procedures and control measures to be followed. All of these procedures are being observed to ensure that the entire duration of the flight will be sound and safe. The pilots and its crew are not allowed to do things their way because they are tightly controlled by the system, slaves of the rules their company have made. No companies will ever allow their employee to deviate from the rules and procedures laid down in their manual unless prior arrangement has been done and approved by the company's top brass. The same thing happens in every hospital. Surgeons, anesthesiologists, nurses, and other medical experts are to strictly follow the procedures and instructions laid down in the operating room. Not doing so can result in confusion and disorder in their work. Great health risk exposure by the medical practitioners and catastrophe to the patients themselves. Having control measures at school doesn't mean that students are being stripped of their autonomy and control of themselves. Everybody needs to have control for everything so that everything will be in order. Now, if the modern day schooling is turning millions of people into robots, may it be literally or figuratively, and literally more than a century, nothing has changed in the educational system, then we begin counting from the start of traditional schooling up to present. This is supposed to produce not only millions of robots, but by the billions of robots. Have we seen one? Even the military, which has the strictest discipline for their recruits, hasn't produced robots. Zombies, but actually soldiers who are quick to respond and precise in target. All in all, swift in their military operation. Next, school claim that most of the learning that happens in school today is not authentic because it relies on memorization and rote learning. Misconception again. Reality of it. There's no such thing as inauthentic learning at school. It is very easy to complain in any situations or circumstances, but hard to make solution out of that complaint not only directed at school, but to anything or to anybody. It is a given fact, though, that no one will retain all the knowledge being memorized in a day unless to those individuals who have an excellent memory retention or a genius. That is why we need that so-called rote learning. Even dance steps are being repeatedly practiced to perfect its performance. Even the piano and guitar lessons are repeatedly practiced to master the pieces. Even singing is repeatedly practiced to get the perfect voice and lyrics. Yes, these talents can be forgotten in a day, especially if the practice time is minimal. But once tried for the second time, after getting stuck up for some time, it can be easily recalled and done beautifully again. The same thing happened in math, science, language, and other subjects. We know for the fact that constant practice makes perfect, and the longer time exposure to a certain topic, the longer retention time it can be stored in the mind. Components for inventions, discoveries, and other scientific breakthroughs and milestones are knowledge retained in the brain, memorization, and rote learning. These are to be reinforced with analytical thinking aside from the drive of an individual to answer their imaginative queries and curiosities. So, aside from memorization and rote learning, students are encouraged to be imaginative, be curious, and analytical to whatever task at hand. Likewise, to the teachers, they are encouraged to be creative and resourceful in finding ways to increase their effectiveness as an educators. Phrases like obsessed with standardized tests, bubbling in a multiple choice question will determine success. In fact, these tests are too good to be used and should be abandoned. And we have an extremely standardized test. Again, misconception. Reality of it. How come that Finland and Singapore are considered the top-notch countries in the world in terms of education as quoted by Prince EA himself? Aren't their rankings measured by an international standardized test? How did we know of Albert Einstein's IQ had it not for the standardized test? Even Prince EA believed in Einstein that he even quoted his very words, everybody is a genius. Those companies that deal with specialized knowledge and skills in their job that they require their soon-to-be employee to pass their own standardized test. Before anyone can become a pilot, doctor, engineer, lawyer, chemist, etc., they need to pass a certain standardized test. Surely, this is not to determine their success or failure in their lives. This is only to measure how much knowledge and expertise they have in that field. Imagine you are in the operating room of the hospital. Would you entrust your health to someone who is not knowledgeable or expert in that field? In court of law, would you not find the best available defense or prosecution attorney to handle your case? Would you fly in an airplane whose pilot did not even study or did not take any knowledge or skill confirmation kind of exam? Every primary and secondary schools have their own set of standardized tests even before students can be accepted and attend their school. This is to know their strengths and weaknesses. Even colleges or universities have their entrance exam too. This is to know if the field of their choice is in accordance with their aptitude, skill, and knowledge. In the duration of school period, standardized tests are being regularly conducted. This is definitely not because to determine the success or failure of the students, but to know if the students are learning and doing their responsibilities. The statement that no room for passions and interest. This doesn't respect the basic fact of being human, that each of us is unique and different in our own way, never finding their gifts, thinking they are stupid, believing they are useless, killing creativity and individuality, and being intellectually abusive. These statements are again misconceptions. Reality of it. I agree with the fact that each one of us is unique and different in our own way. But it is not justifiable to conclude that there are no room for passions and interests, that the student never find their gifts, their creativity and individuality are being killed. There are extracurricular activities in school wherein one can join and develop their passions and interests, like clubs for music, math, science, art, and sports club, to name a few. How can anyone know the student's strengths, needs, gifts if they will not be exposed to different learning practices? How would one know that he or she is good in music if he or she is not exposed to that? The same thing with math, science, art, and with all the subjects. Whatever talent one has is also being developed in school. Imagine a child who knows for the rest of her or her life music alone, another child who knows only how to dance, another child who knows only language, another child who knows only math, another child who knows only science, because they are being taught only of the subject according to their strengths, needs, gifts, and dreams. Would it not mean that we are stripping them of their liberty to learn and enjoy other fields other than strengths, needs, gifts, and dreams? Children at their young age, up until they realized their strength or before going to colleges or universities, should be taught of the general knowledge in math, science, computer, social studies, language, music, art, sport, health, value formation, home economics, and do-it-yourself crafts. These subjects should be taught in preparation for their future. Teaching those subjects to students would make them well-rounded individuals that are able to cope with the fast-changing times, be able to know their strengths and weaknesses, and decide for themselves what to do later. Isn't it that education system did not and is not controlling the students and not making them robots because they have plenty of fields to choose from? And if kids are never finding their gifts, their creativity and individuality are being killed, and their intellect are being abused, what about this new generation of top achievers? Young scientists like Elizabeth Nance and Aaron Hodges, Facebook founder and CEO Mark Zuckerberg, YouTube founders Chad Hurley, Steve Chen, and Jawed Karim, singers like Ed Sheeran and Taylor Swift, artists like Bianca Brunner and Samira Yamin, authors like Jake Massonet, Guptara Brothers, Alec Grevin, and actually just few are intentionally mentioned here out of millions of them because enumerating those would not suffice in these few minutes of my video. All this happened and happening because of the modern day schooling that allegedly doesn't respect the basic fact of being human, that each of us is unique and different in our own way. To conclude, education doesn't only take place at school, it happens everywhere. The very important part of that learning is not only the academic, skill, or talent side of it, but its moral value of respect for all and for any professions, skills, and talents. The obedience to rules, policies, instructions, and procedures are for peace, order, and for successful operation and development of a project, a completion of it. The present education system already produced and still is producing experts of the world in their chosen fields. Yes, I agree that the school system must upgrade itself to cater for the modern world of learners, but be reminded that student success or failure is not entirely dependent at school alone. It is a combination of factors such as the availability of resources, environment, friends, relatives, own family, and the major factor is oneself. All of us should understand that in school, teachers are only a guide for learning, while at home, it is the parents or guardians who are supposed to teach them. But then, no matter how good the educational system is, no matter how good the educators are, no matter how beautiful and modern the classrooms are, no matter how much resources are in place, no matter how much encouragement or push friends and family are giving to the students, but if the student is uninterested, unwilling, nothing will happen. The same is true in the opposite. So let us encourage our students to do their best of whatever task they have at hand and develop their genius in them.